The endless void outside the observation dome stretched black and infinite, a canvas of pinpricks and gleaming fires, distant stars flickering like ancient beacons. Inside the Veridian flagship Obsidian Spire, the sterile hum of machinery filled the air, a steady pulse beneath the quiet murmurs of the crew. Vol'tal stood motionless, limbs folded tightly, his iridescent carapace catching the pale blue lights that lined the walls. He could feel the vibrations of the ship, a subtle thrumming beneath his feet, as if the spire itself breathed with an anxious rhythm. Before him, the viewscreen dominated the chamber, a massive window into the abyss. Far ahead, a solitary human vessel drifted, small, inconspicuous, barely a whisper against the colossal armada assembled around it. The Veridian fleet was vast, countless warships bristling with weapons and shields, a living web of metal and firepower. Yet here was this lone human craft, defiant and unyielding, an anomaly in the symphony of war. Vol'tal's multifaceted eyes narrowed, reflecting the distant shape of the human ship. It was a vessel like no other he had ever studied. Not in design, nor in intent. The Veridians prided themselves on their scientific rigor, their mastery of xenobiology and warfare alike. They had analyzed human technology thoroughly, dissecting data streams, intercepting communications, and scrutinizing every physical sample captured in skirmishes. But this ship, this singular human presence in the midst of their armada, was a mystery that unsettled even their most seasoned minds. Behind him, the soft footsteps of Vashdor approached. The scientist's slender frame moved with measured steps, his translucent skin shimmering faintly under the artificial light. Vashdor's multiple eyes gleamed with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension as he joined Vol'tal at the viewport. "They are different," Vashdor murmured, voice a blend of wonder and unease. "Our analysis of their physiology suggested fragility, yet they endure. Their healing processes, astonishing. Rapid cellular regeneration beyond our predictions." Vol'tal did not respond immediately. His mind replayed the data Vashdor had supplied over the last cycle. The footage of human soldiers recovering from injuries that would have been fatal to Veridians. The biochemical assays revealing an almost supernatural rate of tissue repair. The very labs where these studies had taken place now sat sealed and quarantined. The Veridian scientific teams, instructed to maintain strict isolation protocols. Anomalies had rippled through the samples, microscopic pathogens that defied containment. The human healing factor was not merely biological. It was a force that challenged Veridian understanding. Yet despite their capabilities, Vol'tal said slowly, "They remain outnumbered. One vessel alone against our armada is illogical." Vashdor's mandibles clicked softly. "Perhaps not illogical, but something beyond our grasp. Their resilience may be rooted in more than mere biology. Their will to survive, perhaps. Their unity." The ambient light in the chamber shifted subtly as the Obsidian Spire adjusted position, the distant stars realigning through the viewport. Outside, the human ship maintained its course, steady and unyielding, like a solitary flame amid a storm of darkness. Vol'tal inhaled deeply, the cool recycled air filling his lungs. The scent of ionized metal and ozone lingered faintly, a reminder of the countless battles waged in the cold reaches of space. His thoughts drifted to the reports filtering in from the front lines. Veridian forces struggling to suppress human resistance on numerous worlds, yet always encountering unexpected tenacity and rapid recovery among their adversaries. In one such report, Commander Rachel Petal's name had surfaced repeatedly. A human leader whose reputation was as unbreakable as the vessel she commanded. Vol'tal had observed her tactical maneuvers, precise and daring, defying logic by refusing retreat and holding positions deemed untenable. It was as if she and her crew were fueled by something beyond mere strategy, perhaps a shared core of indomitable spirit. The labs, where Vashdor and his team had dissected human samples, were now a sealed zone aboard the Obsidian Spire. The quarantine protocols ensured that nothing escaped, yet whispers had begun to circulate among the scientific ranks. Some specimens exhibited unexpected behavior, enzymes that rewrote genetic codes, cells that multiplied and adapted at unprecedented speeds. Attempts to replicate these traits in Veridian subjects had ended in failure. And worse, contamination. Vol'tal's antennae twitched as a low alarm sounded softly in the distance. The bridge was reporting increased activity around the human vessel. Sensors detected subtle energy fluctuations, signatures of healing fields, or regenerative pulses, technologies and biological mechanisms intertwined. The crew on the human ship was not merely surviving, they were recovering faster than any known species could. A flicker passed across the viewport, a burst of light from the human ship's engineering section. The glow was faint but unmistakable, a surge of power, a healing wave unleashed into space. The Veridian sensors struggled to interpret the readings. It was unlike any defensive measure the Veridians had encountered. Vashdor's voice lowered tense. "Y must consider that their healing is a form of defense, perhaps even offense. Our attempts to study it have only provoked them." Vol'tal's thoughts spiraled. The Veridian armada was a monument of strength. Countless ships armed with plasma cannons, missile arrays, and quantum disruptors. They were confident in their superiority, yet here was one human ship that seemed impervious to their might. The quarantine of the scientific labs, intended as a precaution, now felt like a warning unheeded. The room's atmosphere thickened with unspoken fear. The scientists, once proud of their breakthroughs, now found themselves pawns in a larger enigma. How could a single vessel embody the strength of an entire species? How could humanity defy the laws of biology and war simultaneously? Vol'tal adjusted his posture, mind sharpening. He resolved to command a direct approach. If one ship was all humanity needed, he would understand why. The armada would not underestimate the human spirit again. Outside, the dark expanse swallowed the flickering stars. The human ship advanced, unyielding, its presence a silent challenge to the might of the Veridian fleet. A storm brewed in the void. A battle not just of weapons, but of wills and wonders far beyond the cold calculus of war. Vol'tal's multifaceted eyes fixed on the human vessel. The story of survival and healing was only beginning, and the Veridians were about to learn what it truly meant to face humanity. The labs remained sealed, their doors locked tight as the Obsidian Spire, prepared to confront the singular force that might decide the fate of countless worlds. In the silence before the storm, Vol'tal whispered to himself, "Let us see what one ship can do." The sterile hum of the Veridian research station was as relentless as the distant stars themselves. An unyielding drone that filled every corner of the vast laboratory complex. Rows of luminescent panels bathed the room in an eerie green light, casting long, wavering shadows on the smooth metal floors. Each console flickered with data streams, complex alien symbols in vibrant hues pulsating like tiny galaxies trapped within glass screens. The air was heavy with the sterile scent of antiseptics and the faint, metallic tang that always accompanied the station's life support systems. Somewhere beneath the mechanical heartbeat of the facility, the distant clang of machinery echoed, a reminder that this outpost was alive, far from the verdant jungles and endless azure skies of Veridia's surface. Within this cold sanctuary of science, Vashdor stood motionless, his many eyes reflecting the shimmering data before him yet failing to register the usual excitement that accompanied a breakthrough. His mandibles twitched subtly, a sign of deep contemplation among his kind, as he observed the human subject resting within the transparent containment chamber before him. The chamber's thick walls were lined with an intricate lattice of nanofiber conduits, glowing faintly with bioluminescent blue pulses as they monitored every heartbeat, every nerve impulse, every cellular shift within the occupant's body. Rachel Patel lay motionless inside, her chest rising and falling with a measured rhythm that betrayed no pain or distress. Her skin, a warm bronze, contrasted starkly with the clinical white light surrounding her. Small cuts and bruises, remnants of the skirmish earlier, were already fading, their edges blurring as if reality itself sought to erase the evidence of trauma. Vashdor, armed with centuries of experience and countless hours analyzing alien physiology, found himself struggling to comprehend what he witnessed. He had studied countless species, each with their own biological strengths and vulnerabilities, but nothing in the vast annals of Veridian science could explain the human's rapid recovery. Their wounds healed swiftly, their bodies seemingly immune to the slow, degenerative damage that afflicted other life forms when exposed to the station's hostile environment. It was as if the human physiology was an unyielding force, resistant to entropy and cellular decay in a way that defied known biological principles. Around him, the laboratory was alive with the silent chatter of diagnostic instruments. Holographic displays whirled in the air, projecting three-dimensional models of human anatomy in exquisite detail. Tiny clusters of cells danced and multiplied with uncanny speed, each division a symphony of perfect replication and repair. Vashdor's multifaceted eyes darted from display to display, trying to pinpoint the source of this anomaly. Some hidden mechanism of cellular regeneration. The answers eluded him, slipping like shadows just beyond his grasp. The room's atmosphere thickened with tension as more Veridian scientists gathered, their chatter muted behind the reinforced glass walls. Vol'tal, the stoic alien commander, stood nearby, his towering frame casting a long shadow over the scene. He observed the proceedings with a mixture of skepticism and dawning unease. The Veridians had faced countless foes, their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers ensuring victory time and again. Yet here, in this sterile chamber, a single human, one ship's commander, was rewriting the rules of engagement. Vashdor's internal sensors detected a subtle shift in Rachel's physiology. A faint surge of bioelectric energy rippled across her skin, a silent pulse that no Veridian had seen before. It was as if her body was not just healing but adapting, evolving in real time to counteract the injuries inflicted. The laboratory's ambient light flickered, momentarily dimming as the system struggled to keep pace with the rapid changes occurring within the containment field. The scent of ozone filled the air, an unintended consequence of the bioelectrical activity, mingling with the antiseptic fragrance. Vashdor's antennae twitched, catching the faintest vibrations that resonated through the station's metal framework. Somewhere deep inside, a warning signal began to pulse, a silent alarm that the Veridians were grappling with an enigma that threatened their understanding of biological limits. Despite the clinical environment, the scene held a palpable humanity, an intangible warmth emanating from the human subject. Rachel's closed eyes and steady breath contrasted sharply with the clinical detachment of the Veridian observers. In that moment, Vashdor realized that what he saw was not merely a biological phenomenon. It was a testament to a species' will to survive, an indomitable spirit encoded in flesh and bone. Minutes stretched into hours as the scientists documented every detail, their instruments capturing terabytes of data in relentless streams. Vashdor's mind raced through hypotheses and simulations, his thoughts a chaotic tempest of possibilities. Could this healing ability be replicated? Could it be weaponized or harnessed to fortify Veridian biology? The implications were staggering. If such resilience were widespread among humans, then the entire armada's assumptions about the enemy's fragility were fatally flawed. Outside the containment chamber, the laboratory's ambient temperature remained constant, yet a subtle warmth seemed to emanate from the human subject, a living core of vitality amidst the cold metal and sterile light. Vashdor's senses attuned to this paradox, the cold precision of science meeting the raw, unyielding force of life itself. It was a revelation that unsettled the scientific community and challenged the military hierarchy alike. The hum of the ventilation system was punctuated by the distant rumble of the armada's engines, a constant reminder of the stakes beyond these walls. Vol'tal's voice, calm but resolute, echoed in Vashdor's mind, an unspoken command to understand, to adapt, to prepare. The battle was not just for territory anymore. It was a contest of survival against a foe whose biology was an enigma wrapped in defiance. As the lab's systems continued to monitor, Vashdor's eyes caught a sudden spike in metabolic activity. The human cellular structures were not only repairing damage, but fortifying themselves, weaving a complex matrix of proteins and enzymes that enhanced structural integrity. It was as if each injury was a signal to improve, to grow stronger in response to adversity. The lab's sensors registered increases in mitochondrial output, accelerated enzyme production, and a host of biochemical reactions that defied the Veridian understanding of time-dependent healing. The realization struck Vashdor with the force of a supernova. Humans were more than just resilient. They were adaptive in ways the Veridians had never encountered. Their biology was a dynamic battlefield, with healing mechanisms that operated at a pace and efficiency unmatched in the known galaxy. This was no mere anomaly. It was a fundamental characteristic of the species, a living testament to their survival against impossible odds. In the silence that followed, Vashdor felt a cold dread settle within his chest cavity. The quarantine protocols had been swift, the containment chambers sealed and reinforced, but the implications reached far beyond the laboratory's walls. If a single human could withstand such trauma, what horrors awaited the Armada, should these beings be unleashed in full force? The Veridian fleet's confidence, once unshakable, now wavered like a candle flame caught in a storm. Outside the lab's reinforced windows, the stars continued their silent vigil, indifferent to the unfolding revelations. Yet within the station, beneath the unyielding glare of artificial light, a profound truth had emerged. Humanity's healing was not just a biological quirk. It was a weapon, a shield, an unspoken defiance against extinction. And the Veridians, for all their technological might and countless conquests, were unprepared for the storm they had underestimated. Vashdor's antennae lowered slightly, a sign of respect mingled with apprehension. He had witnessed many forms of life, many fates, but never had he felt the weight of such a revelation so deeply. The human before him was more than a prisoner. She was a beacon of resilience, a living testament to the indomitable spirit that had propelled her species through millennia of conflict and survival. The laboratory's sterile air seemed to thicken with the gravity of this moment. The scientists exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement that their mission had just transformed. No longer was this study a mere collection of data points. It had become a race against an unseen enemy whose strength lay not in numbers or weapons, but in the very essence of life itself. As the station's systems continued to hum their cold, relentless song, Vashdor studied Rachel Petal's breathing, steady and unbroken. The cuts on her skin were nearly invisible now, replaced by a faint sheen of regenerative tissue that shimmered like glass under the lab light. A subtle warmth radiated from her palms, a living pulse that seemed to defy the cold sterility surrounding her. For the first time, the Veridians understood that their greatest threat was not the firepower of a massive armada, but the unyielding physiology of a single human. And with that understanding came the chilling realization that their war was far from over. It had only just begun. The dim, humming corridors of the Veridian research station pulsed with a heavy, unnatural silence. Vashdor moved cautiously through the labyrinthine hallways, his multi-faceted eyes reflecting the harsh, sterile light that flickered overhead. The air was thick with the sterile scent of antiseptics and chemical solvents, an oppressive blend that stifled any lingering hope that this place might be safe. The quarantine barrier, an invisible but impenetrable force field, hummed faintly at the edges of his awareness, a constant reminder that beyond these walls lay an unseen threat, one that had rewritten everything the Veridians thought they knew about the humans. Vashtor paused before a reinforced observation window, peering into the adjacent lab chamber where the latest subject was held. The human, a tall figure with dark, determined eyes, sat upright despite the bio-containment suit that enveloped him like a second skin. His breathing was steady, controlled, yet beneath the surface was something else. A restless energy that neither the Veridian scientists nor their technology could fully comprehend. The human's wounds, treated mere hours ago, had healed at an alarming rate, tissues knitting themselves with unnatural speed, cellular structures regenerating before Vashtor's eyes. The scientists had expected rapid healing, yes, but this was beyond anything cataloged in the Veridian databases. For days, Vashtor had studied the logs, the microscopic scans, the genetic markers, each data stream reinforcing a terrifying truth. Humans did not simply heal, they adapted. Their biology was a shifting mosaic, evolving in real time to counteract whatever threat was presented. The first revelation had been their immune systems. Complex, aggressive, capable of neutralizing Veridian bioengineered pathogens almost instantaneously. But this second revelation was far more profound. Humans possessed an adaptive strategy that transcended mere defense. They actively rewrote their own biology on the fly, crafting specialized responses to novel stimuli with frightening precision. The implications were staggering. The Veridian armada, with its vast fleets, advanced weapons, and overwhelming technological might, had underestimated this single human vessel. The entire Veridian war effort hinged on overwhelming firepower and relentless, calculated strikes. But the humans, confined to one ship, were evolving faster than any battlefield could keep pace with. Vashtor's mind raced through the endless calculations, attempting to predict the next stage of human adaptation. He recalled the skirmish in orbit around the Veridian homeworld. The human ship had taken multiple direct hits, its hull breached in several places, yet the crew had emerged unscathed. Even more disturbing was the human commander's ability to retrain her soldiers, not just physically, but mentally. The stress tests conducted on captured human subjects revealed something extraordinary. Their neural pathways reconfigured to optimize problem-solving under duress. Their muscles regenerated with enhanced strength and endurance, and their senses heightened to near preternatural levels. The laboratory's sensory monitors crackled softly as Vashtor turned from the observation window and moved toward the data console. Streams of information scrolled across the transparent interface, illuminating the dark room with eerie blue light. Each entry detailed a new mutation, a new cellular response, sometimes subtle, sometimes dramatic, but always effective. The human body was a battlefield unto itself, adapting with a fluidity that defied the rigid biological models Veridian science depended upon. Suddenly, the station's alarms shattered the silence. Sharp, urgent, unrelenting. Vashtor's mandibles twitched involuntarily as a wave of tension surged through his exoskeleton. The command center had detected a breach. He raced toward the comm panel, the sharp metallic clang of his footsteps echoing through the corridors. Static crackled as he activated the link. Commander Vol'tal. Vashtor's voice was a measured, urgent hum. Our defenses have been compromised in Sector 7. Unknown intruders detected inside the quarantine zone. Vol'tal's voice, deep and commanding, responded immediately. Contain the breach. No unauthorized access beyond quarantine perimeters. We cannot risk contamination. Vashtor's multi-eyed gaze flicked to the surveillance feeds. The images revealed garbled shapes, moving with intent through the quarantined labs. Silhouettes that moved with human precision, blending shadows and light like predators. The intruders were not Veridian. The data was clear. It was the human soldiers, their small frames darting through the maze of corridors with uncanny speed and coordination. The quarantine protocols had failed. Adrenaline surged through Vashdor's limbs as he initiated lockdown sequences. Magnetic barriers slammed into place, sealing off entire wings of the station. Automated defense drones stirred to life, their mechanical wings whirring as they deployed in swarms to intercept the intruders. The lab's sterile air was replaced by the acrid tang of ionized plasma from weapon discharges. Explosions reverberated through the station's shell, shaking ancient support beams as Vashdor fought to maintain control. Amid the chaos, the human soldiers advanced with a terrifying calm. Their bodies absorbed impacts that would incapacitate any Veridian warrior, their wounds sealing almost instantaneously. Nathan Rodriguez, the tactical leader among the human intruders, moved with lethal grace, his every motion honed by relentless training and an unyielding will to survive. His eyes glinted with a fierce determination as he directed his squad through the labyrinth, bypassing security systems with improvised tools and sheer instinct. Vashdor's mind reeled as he observed the humans' tactics. They did not merely fight, they evolved in response to each threat. When drones swarmed, the humans adapted their formations, exploiting weaknesses in the automated systems. When energy weapons scorched the air, the soldiers moved with fluid speed, their reflexes enhanced beyond normal limits. The Veridian defense grid, designed to overpower any enemy through sheer force, was being unraveled by a living, breathing enigma. And then came the second revelation in full force. As the firefight escalated, Vashdor witnessed the human soldiers' bodies undergoing startling transformations in real time. Scars faded, bruises disappeared, and even broken bones knit themselves back together. More astonishingly, Nathan's squad displayed heightened senses. Hearing distant footsteps through reinforced walls, detecting subtle shifts in atmospheric pressure, and anticipating enemy movements with uncanny precision. The station's containment systems, meant to isolate and neutralize infectious agents, suddenly became instruments of observation for something far more complex. The Veridians had assumed that human healing was merely rapid regeneration. Now it was clear that humans were capable of strategic adaptation, reconfiguring their own biology to overcome specific challenges. Their bodies were not static organisms but dynamic systems, rewriting their own blueprints in response to threats. In the heart of the lab, Vashdor's eyes caught the subtle shimmer of a new phenomenon. The human neural network itself was mutable. Neurological scans revealed synaptic pathways reforming at breakneck speed, enabling enhanced cognitive functions. This was not just healing. It was evolution accelerated, a biological arms race taking place within a single lifetime. The alarms blared louder as the station's core systems began to falter under the pressure of the breach. Vashdor's exoskeleton thrummed with tension as he sprinted toward the containment chamber, only to find the humans had already reached their prize. A cache of experimental data logs and synthesized biological samples. The soldiers moved quickly, dismantling security nodes and downloading critical information, their mission clear: to understand and harness the power of human adaptation, even in the heart of Veridian science. Vashdor's mandibles clenched in frustration. The Veridian response had been too slow, too reliant on outdated tactics. This single human vessel, with its crew of adaptable warriors, had shattered the illusion of Veridian superiority. Their biology was a weapon as much as any plasma cannon, a living shield against annihilation. As the human intruders retreated, slipping back through the labyrinthine corridors, Vashdor activated a final protocol, a quarantine lockdown that would seal the station indefinitely if breached again. The heavy metallic doors hissed shut, isolating the infected labs and trapping the human threat within a sealed containment zone. The station trembled under the strain, systems flickering as biohazard warnings pulsed through the network. In the eerie aftermath, Vashdor stood alone amidst the wreckage, his multi-faceted eyes scanning the damage. The second revelation had redefined the war. Humans were not merely survivors, but architects of their own evolution. They did not fight with brute force alone, but with a biology that adapted, evolved, and overcame. The Veridian armada, vast and powerful though it was, faced a new reality. This single human vessel, its crew bound by resilience and relentless adaptation, was a force beyond calculation, a living embodiment of the truth that sometimes one was all humanity needed. The Veridian research station, perched precariously on the edge of a shattered moon orbiting the gas giant, Telvan, pulsed with a sterile, antiseptic hum that was suddenly too loud in the silent void. Vashdor stood motionless in the center of the main laboratory, the cold blue glow of the containment fields, casting long shadows across the cracked alloy floor. His segmented mandibles twitched involuntarily as he absorbed the harrowing data streaming across his ocular arrays, the evidence of yet another human anomaly defying all known biological limits. The first two revelations, human cellular regeneration and their adaptive immunity, had shaken the foundation of Veridian medical science. But this final discovery, tore through the veneer of their understanding like a rippling shockwave. The humans did not merely heal as individuals, their survival was amplified exponentially through connections, through bonds. A network that operated beyond genetics or biochemistry. A living, breathing collective strength that could not be isolated or contained. Vashdor's multiple eyes drifted to the hooded figures in containment pods, human samples taken from the battleship Aurora. Their wounds, once grievous and terminal, had healed rapidly. Yet what fascinated him most now was the subtle, almost imperceptible resonance of neural frequencies sensing between pods. He reached out with a trembling tendril to adjust the settings of the neural monitoring array, watching the graph spike in rhythmic patterns. This was not mere coincidence. Even in stasis, the human's mind sought connection, an invisible thread weaving them into a single, indomitable organism. Outside the thick, reinforced glass windows, the dismal gray light of the shattered moon filtered through dust clouds swirling in low gravity. The silence was punctuated by the faint, distant rumble of the Veridian armada's engines. A constant reminder of the vast, cold war beyond the fragile walls of the research station. Vashdor's thoughts drifted momentarily to Vol'tal, the commanding general who had ordered the quarantine. The commander's reaction had been a mixture of incredulity and frustration, a refusal to accept that the humans could wield such inexplicable power. Now, however, the evidence was irrefutable. Within the labyrinthine corridors of the Aurora, Commander Rachel Patel stood silently in the med bay, her eyes closed as the neural synchronization module hummed softly behind her. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic mixed with the metallic tang of recycled air, the sterile environment belying the chaos that had unfolded just days before. She could still feel the lingering fatigue in her muscles, a dull ache beneath the surface that her body's healing systems were actively repairing. Yet, the true strength was not in her alone. Around her the crew, soldiers like Nathan Rodriguez, engineers, medics, were linked in a network of shared consciousness, a tapestry of collective will that surged stronger with every heartbeat. Rachel could sense their presence, a subtle echo in the back of her mind, a comforting hum of unity that no Veridian technology could replicate. She understood now that their survival depended not on individual prowess, but on their unbreakable bonds. Suddenly, the soft alarm blared, shattering the meditative calm. Rachel's eyes snapped open, sharp and alert. The ship's internal sensors were reporting an unauthorized breach in the cargo bay. The barrier doors hissed as automated defenses activated, sealing the compartment. But the sound of heavy footsteps echoed closer. Veridian boarding parties. The battle was no longer confined to the distant stars. It had infiltrated their sanctuary. Nathan's voice crackled through the comms, low and steady despite the tension. "They're inside, Commander. We need to hold them off. Buy time for the neural link to stabilize." Rachel moved swiftly, muscles coiling with the practiced precision of a soldier who had faced death too many times to count. The sharp scent of burning circuitry mingled with the acrid smoke rising from damaged panels as she reached the cargo bay's threshold. The corridor outside was bathed in harsh, flickering red emergency lights, casting long, chaotic shadows. Through the reinforced glass, she glimpsed the Veridian Marines, tall, armored figures with glistening exoskeletons and multifaceted eyes that reflected their determination. Their weapons emitted a low hum, energy pulses ready to unleash devastation. Rachel's pulse quickened, but the neural link steadied her, a constant reminder that she was not alone. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a narrow battleground littered with crates and debris. The Veridians surged forward, their movements fluid and precise, but Rachel and her squad met them with unwavering resistance. The clang of plasma rifles, the sharp crack of energy blades, and the grunts of exertion filled the cramped space. Nathan was a whirlwind of controlled aggression, his movements synchronized with Rachel's commands and the silent rhythms of their shared consciousness. The humans fought not as individuals, but as a single organism, each action anticipated and supported. When one faltered, another compensated instantly, the neural bond weaving a shield stronger than steel or energy barriers. Vashdor observed the battle's telemetry from the distant lab, his multiple eyes narrowing. The human unity was more than tactical coordination. It was a living phenomenon. The Veridians' advanced weaponry and armor, engineered to overpower any known species, were being outmatched not by brute force, but by an invisible, intangible connection that healed wounds and reinforced resolve. The air inside the cargo bay thickened with the metallic scent of blood and ozone. Rachel felt the sting of a plasma scorch on her arm, but barely registered it, her body already regenerating the damage. The pain was a faint reminder, a thread pulling her back to the visceral reality of the fight. Yet, the strength that surged through her veins was more than physiological. It was the relentless spirit of humanity, a collective heart beating in unison. As the Veridians pressed their assault, the humans initiated a counter-maneuver, retreating strategically into a narrow corridor where the aliens' numerical advantage diminished. The tight space amplified the intensity of the struggle, each blow and parry a desperate bid for survival. Rachel's breathing was steady despite the chaos, anchored by the persistent hum in her mind. The neural link that connected her to Nathan and the others. Suddenly, a sharp explosion rocked the corridor behind them. The emergency bulkhead had been breached, and a surge of Veridian reinforcements flowed in like a tide. The humans were cornered. But then, a sudden shift occurred. The neural bond flared, a radiant pulse that rippled through their shared consciousness, igniting a surge of energy that transcended physical boundaries. Rachel felt a wave of strength wash over her, muscles tightening and reflexes sharpening beyond natural limits. Nathan's voice echoed in her mind, not through the comms, but directly, a mental thread of encouragement and resolve. The others responded in kind, their wills converging into a singular force that defied explanation. In that moment, the humans acted as one, an unbreakable entity fueled by connection, not isolation. Their movements became a fluid dance of precision and power, each strike and defense amplified by the collective intent. The Veridian Marines, formidable as they were, found themselves overwhelmed not just by skill, but by an indomitable spirit that resisted defeat. The battle ended as abruptly as it had begun. The Veridians withdrew, battered and stunned, leaving behind the battered corridor and the triumphant echoes of human resilience. Rachel collapsed against the cold wall, exhaustion crashing into her like a tidal wave. Yet, even in the depths of fatigue, the neural link remained alive, a gentle pulse of unity that promised hope. Back in the research station, Vashtor withdrew from the observation window, his mind racing. The quarantine was no longer just a precaution. It was a necessity born from fear. Fear of a species that not only survived with unparalleled vigor, but thrived through bonds that transcended science and technology. He imagined Vol'tal's stern visage, rigid with disbelief and reluctant respect. The commander's prior dismissals echoed hollowly in his mind. The humans were not anomalies to be studied in isolation. They were a revelation, a force that could not be contained by walls or weapons. The laboratory's airlock cycled open with a hiss, and Vashtor stepped into the dim hallway, the cold metal floor vibrating faintly beneath his feet. He paused, the weight of his discoveries pressing heavily on his shoulders. The shattered moon outside seemed to mirror the fracturing certainty of Veridian knowledge. The third revelation was clear. Humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, nor their biology alone, but the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of survival. Connections that healed, empowered, and united them as one. And in the vast darkness of space, where isolation often meant death, those bonds were the light that would guide them through the coming storm. Vol'tal's eyes narrowed as he stood on the bridge of the Veridian command ship, the vast starfield stretching beyond the thick armored viewport like an endless ocean of ink and scattered diamonds. His massive frame was tense, every limb taut with anticipation, every sensor in his body alert to the unfolding chaos. Before them, the lone human vessel moved with an almost serene resolve, a single bright beacon of defiance etched against the yawning void, an anomaly that defied all Veridian strategic doctrines. The armada's countless warships, their hulls gleaming coldly with the light of distant suns, formed a colossal crescent around the human ship, poised to crush it with overwhelming firepower. But the human ship did not flinch. Inside the command center, the air was thick with charged energy, the low hum of the ship's core resonating through the deck plates. Vol'tal could almost taste the metallic tang of ionized particles lingering from the recent kinetic blasts that had torn into their forward shields. The human vessel's shields rippled with faint, iridescent glows, pulsing rhythmically as if breathing, an uncanny vitality that no Veridian technology had ever exhibited. Vashtor, the lead scientist, stood beside Vol'tal, his multifaceted eyes wide with a mixture of dread and fascination. The laboratory quarters of their research station, once filled with sterile, clinical scents, now echoed with the distant sounds of alarms and the stifled crackle of communication channels firing in chaotic bursts. The quarantine labs where human specimens had been studied lay silent, their eerie stillness a stark contrast to the maelstrom that raged outside. Vol'tal's mind raced, tracing the fragments of data that Vashtor had relayed moments ago. The healing factor observed in humans, the rapid cellular regeneration, the astonishing recovery from wounds that would cripple any Veridian at best, had been dismissed at first as an anomaly. But this singular ship, piloted by a species so tenacious and seemingly fragile, had proven that it was a force beyond prediction. More than that, it was a weapon. The human vessel surged forward, weaving gracefully through the Veridian formations like a phantom, its sleek hull shimmering under the assault of enemy fire. Explosions blossomed in the void as concentrated plasma bolts slammed against its defenses. Yet the ship's structural integrity held firm. The Veridians watched in mounting horror as the human ship unleashed its counterattack. A cascade of focused energy pulses that punched through the shields of 2 escort vessels, leaving them drifting lifeless among the stars. Vol'tal's claws clenched involuntarily, a raw surge of frustration and disbelief coursing through him. This was not a war fought with numbers or brute force. This was a war of endurance, of will, of something primal that the Veridians had never truly comprehended. The humans' healing capabilities were not merely biological quirks. They were the embodiment of a relentless spirit, a singular force that could not be subdued by conventional means. The bridge shuddered as the Armada's flagship took a heavy hit from the human ship's secondary weapons, the impact reverberating through the massive superstructure. Alarms blared, flashing crimson warnings that rippled across the control panels. Vol'tal's vision blurred momentarily with the rush of adrenaline, but he forced himself to focus, to analyze, to adapt. The Veridian Armada was a machine forged over centuries, but this lone human vessel was a virus, an unpredictable anomaly that threatened to rewrite the rules of engagement. On the human ship, Commander Rachel Paddle's voice was calm yet resolute, transmitted through encrypted channels to her crew. Every moment counted. Every movement was calculated with ruthless precision. The scent of recycled air mixed with the faint metallic tang of the ship's reactors filled the compact bridge. But Rachel's senses were sharpened, attuned to the subtle vibrations in the hull. The flicker of energy surges, the rhythm of the ship's pulse. Nathan Rodriguez stood beside her, his eyes burning with fierce determination, ready to execute orders that danced on the edge of desperation and genius. The human vessel's engines roared, sending a cascade of brilliant blue trails into the darkness as it accelerated toward the core of the Veridian formation. The enemy ships reacted instantly, converging like a predatory swarm, plasma cannons spitting torrents of molten energy. Vol'tal watched, breath caught in his throat, as the human ship dipped and weaved through the barrage with a grace that bordered on defiance. And then, in a flash that seared through the void, the human vessel unleashed the culmination of its offensive. A concentrated pulse of energetic force, a weapon born of the very essence of human resilience and healing. The blast radiated outward, washing over the escort ships like a tidal wave, their shields flickering and collapsing as systems overheated and hulls fractured. The Veridian vessels erupted in brilliant, silent blossoms of fire and debris, casting eerie halos in the gloom. Vol'tal staggered back, his massive frame trembling. This was no mere ship, it was a catalyst of destruction, a singular force powered by something far deeper than technology or strategy. He could feel it now, the pulse of human tenacity, a force that bent the fabric of expectations and shattered the illusion of Veridian supremacy. The Armada's communications were filled with frantic reports, the chorus of confusion and fear rising in a crescendo that mirrored the destruction unfolding before them. Vashdor's scientific mind raced to comprehend the implications. The human healing mechanisms were not only biological marvels, but had been weaponized through the synergy of their technology and indomitable will. The quarantine imposed upon their research labs, once a precaution, now seemed a cruel irony. Had they unwittingly unleashed a force far greater than they imagined? The human ship's silhouette glowed fiercely as it charged its next assault, the bridge trembling under the strain of its power surges. Rachel's voice was steady in her own mind, a mantra of resolve amid the chaos. The ship was more than metal and circuits. It was a living testament to humanity's unyielding spirit. Every scar it bore, every moment of near destruction it survived, was a chapter of a greater story. A story that now unfolded in the heart of the Veridian Armada. Vol'tal felt a sudden, sharp jolt as the flagship systems began to fail, cascading power losses rippling through the network. The Armada's formations faltered, their tactical advantage slipping through their grasp like grains of cosmic sand. He realized then that the singular human ship was not just a threat, it was a beacon, inspiring a new kind of fear, a primal terror that no amount of firepower could erase. As the human vessel advanced, Vol'tal's thoughts spiraled into a maelstrom of doubt and realization. The Veridian armada, vast and formidable, had been so focused on overwhelming force that it had neglected the unpredictable variable of spirit, the essence of life that could heal, endure, and strike back with devastating precision. The quarantine of their labs, the containment of the human specimens, all had been measures to control a threat they barely understood. Now, that threat was a singular force, relentless and unstoppable. The void around the human vessel seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm, an echo of the healing energies that coursed through its systems and, by extension, its pilot. Rachel's face was etched with determination, her eyes reflecting the swirling chaos outside as she guided her ship deeper into the heart of the Veridian fleet. Nathan moved beside her with swift efficiency, monitoring damage reports and system statuses, the metallic taste of fear replaced by a fierce resolve. The human vessel became a tempest, a storm of energy and will that tore through the Veridian lines. Explosions blossomed like stars in reverse, ships disintegrating into clouds of debris that shimmered briefly before fading into the abyss. The armada's numerical advantage melted away with every calculated strike, every moment of healing and resilience that let the human ship survive counterattacks that should have ended it. Vol'tal's voice was a low growl in the command center, a sound unfamiliar even to his own ears, a mix of rage, awe, and an existential dread that crept steadily through his bones. The singular human vessel was rewriting the very definition of power, and the Veridian armada was unraveling beneath its relentless assault. In the final moments of the confrontation, time seemed to stretch and contract. The vastness of space compressed into a tableau of destruction and survival. The human ship's engines flared with brilliant intensity as it prepared for its last, decisive strike. Vol'tal could only watch, helpless, as the pulse of healing energy radiated outward once more, a crescendo of life and death intertwined. The Veridian armada's flagship exploded in a silent supernova of shattered metal and fire, the shockwave rippling through the surrounding ships and sending them adrift. The formation broke apart, chaos replacing order, hope replaced by despair. The lone human ship floated amid the wreckage, battered but unbroken, its hull glowing softly with the lingering pulse of regenerative energy. The vast Veridian armada had been reduced to scattered remnants, their great power undone by a single, indomitable force. Vol'tal sank to his knees, the cool metal floor pressing against his palms as he stared into the void where his fleet had been undone. The weight of defeat pressed heavily upon him, but beneath it lay a grudging respect. A recognition that sometimes, one ship, one species, one singular force is all humanity needs to turn the tide. The quarantine of the labs, the containment of the specimens, those precautions had been inadequate. Humanity's healing was not a mere biological quirk. It was a profound expression of survival, an unstoppable force that could not be contained by walls or shields. It belonged to the living, to the indomitable spirit that would fight, heal, and endure against all odds. Vol'tal's thoughts drifted, a faint spark of understanding igniting alongside the embers of defeat. The universe was vast and filled with unknowns, and in this moment, the singular human vessel had become a testament to that truth. The Veridians had underestimated humanity's greatest weapon, not their technology or numbers, but their very essence. And now, the silence of the cosmos bore witness to a new reality. Sometimes, one is enough. The air inside the command chamber was thick with the metallic scent of overheating circuits and the faint, acrid tang of burned insulation. Flickering lights cast jagged shadows against the smooth, cold surfaces of the Veridian warship's control panels. Vol'tal stood motionless at the center of the room, his many eyes fixed on the vast holographic projection hovering before him. One single human vessel, solitary and unyielding, its form sleek and scarred from battle, like a stubborn flame refusing to be extinguished amidst a sea of darkness. Outside the reinforced viewports, the cosmic void stretched endlessly. Stars shimmered distant and indifferent, but the space between them crackled with the silent echoes of destruction. Shattered debris from Veridian cruisers, the charred remnants of automated drones, all swallowed by the human ship's relentless counterattack. Vol'tal's mandibles twitched involuntarily. For cycles upon cycles, the Veridian armada had crushed worlds, their fleets overwhelming in number and firepower. Their strategy was unassailable: surround, isolate, and obliterate. Yet here, before him, was an anomaly. One ship had stood against the might of thousands, its hull cracked and bleeding energy, yet still advancing. His thoughts drifted back to the sterile laboratory below decks, where Vashdor and his team had ferreted through the remains of human biological samples recovered from previous skirmishes. They had been so confident that the humans' regenerative abilities were mere happenstance. A slow, primitive process dependent on specialized cells, nothing more. But their quarantine protocols were now a painful testament to error. The labs, once pristine, were now sealed off in containment fields, the air inside tinged with the sickly sweet scent of accelerated cellular growth. The samples had outpaced their containment, evolving with terrifying speed, their healing factors defying all known biological laws. Vol'tal's many eyes narrowed as he recalled Vashdor's reports. Reports that had initially seemed like aberrations, dismissed as experimental contamination. But the truth was undeniable. Human cells did not merely repair. They adapted, learned, and improved. The human healing process was a living system, one that responded dynamically to trauma, countering damage as if it were aware of its own survival. The commander's gaze shifted back to the hologram, where the human vessel loomed, its shields flickering under the barrage of Veridian plasma. The ship's engines glowed with a harsh blue light, pulsating rhythmically as if beating with a stubborn heart. It moved with purpose, weaving through the enemy lines with an almost uncanny grace, as though it knew the dance of destruction intimately. Vol'tal's thoughts were interrupted by a sharp vibration through the floor, an incoming transmission. The room dimmed as the communications interface flickered to life, displaying a crackling image of Commander Rachel Patel. Her face, resolute and calm beneath a sheen of sweat and grime, filled the display. The usual static was tempered by an undercurrent of something unfamiliar: respect. "We have halted our offensive," she announced, voice steady despite the chaos that surrounded her. "We propose a ceasefire. Let us speak." A murmur rippled through the Veridian officers, confusion and suspicion mixing like storm clouds. Vol'tal raised a clawed hand to silence them, his eyes locked on the human commander's image. The silence stretched, heavy and laden with expectation. Before Vol'tal responded, his voice slow and measured, "We accept your terms. Speak." The chamber fell into stillness as the human's voice filled their comm channels, no longer a battle cry, but a bridge between two species. As the ceasefire took hold, the oppressive tension in the room eased, replaced by a fragile thread of curiosity. Vol'tal retreated to his private quarters, the walls glowing faintly with bioluminescent panels that cast soft azure light, soothing after the harsh fluorescent glare of the command center. He sat alone, his thoughts tangled in the web of recent revelations. He remembered the first time he had seen the humans in battle. Their desperation turned to defiance, their will to survive palpable. It was not merely technology or numbers that had made them formidable. It was their resilience, their ability to heal and adapt in ways the Veridians had never anticipated. He ran a claw along the smooth surface of his personal console, recalling the data from the quarantined labs. The human cells, capable of repairing grievous wounds in moments, regenerating entire limbs, resisting toxins and infections almost instantly. It was a biological marvel, a force of nature that defied their scientific paradigms. The Veridian scientists had tried to replicate the healing factors, to weaponize them as the humans had, but the process was complex, intertwined with human biochemistry and genetics in ways they could not emulate. It was a living system, dynamic and ever-changing, and it seemed to reflect the spirit of the species itself, a spirit that would not yield. Vol'tal sighed, a sound like air passing through hollow bone. The war had been a test, a trial by fire that had revealed not only the strength of their enemy, but also the limitations of their own assumptions. He stood, moving to the viewport, watching the scarred human vessel drifting now in the shadow of the Veridian armada. The silence between them was profound, a quiet space where old hostilities could begin to unravel. The ship's lights blinked softly, a beacon of survival and hope against impossible odds. Vol'tal's mind turned to the future. What could be built from this fragile moment of peace? How could two vastly different species find common ground after so much bloodshed? He thought of Rachel Patel, her steadfast courage and open hand extended across the void. Perhaps this was the true strength of humanity, not just their healing cells, but their ability to endure, to forgive, to build bridges where others would see only walls. As the ceasefire held, the Veridian crews began dismantling their weapons, the hum of battle machinery fading to a low murmur. The quarantine fields around the laboratories remained in place, a reminder of the mysteries still to be understood. Vashdor and his team worked cautiously now, their experiments guided by respect and awe rather than fear and ambition. Vol'tal's eyes lingered on the data streams flowing across his console, a tapestry of biological information, interwoven with the stories of a species that had survived through sheer will and miraculous healing. The Veridians were learning slowly that strength was not just measured in firepower or numbers, but in adaptability and resilience. He thought about the soldiers who had fought on both sides, about Nathan Rodriguez, the human soldier who had endured wounds that would have felled any Veridian warrior, only to rise again, unbroken. The thought filled Vol'tal with a strange sense of kinship, a recognition of shared pain and perseverance. Outside, the stars continued their silent watch, indifferent to the machinations of empires and the struggles of life. Yet in this corner of the cosmos, a new chapter was beginning. Written not in destruction, but in understanding, the Veridian armada would no longer see humanity as a mere obstacle to be erased, but as a partner to be reckoned with. A species whose healing was both a biological wonder and a metaphor for hope itself. Vol'tal's many eyes softened as he turned away from the viewport. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, but for the first time, he felt a spark of something beyond war, perhaps the fragile promise of peace. The quarantine labs remained sealed, but within their walls lay the seeds of cooperation. The mysteries of human healing offered not just a weapon, but an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to heal the wounds between their worlds. As the Veridian fleet powered down their weapons and prepared to open channels for dialogue, the human vessel pulsed steadily, a lone heartbeat in the vast darkness. Sometimes, Vol'tal thought, all it took was one ship, one will, to change the course of history. And in that realization, there was a new kind of strength, born not from conquest but from understanding.